quintessential way to explain how my life has changed in the last year is probably we started up the tour last year for As the Crow Flies, and we finished it up. We started it up over at the Cody Center for the West, and so we went over and we did the event there, and then we were heading up to Billings to jump on a plane. So we take off in the car, we're heading up there, and we get to about as far as Red Lodge. And my wife knows I'm kind of like a trained bear. You have to feed me every once in a while, or else things go bad. So we stop at this little cafe in Red Lodge. We're getting something to eat, and I go back over and I'm writing a check for for the lunch. And when I'm not wearing one of these, I'm wearing one of those Absaroka County Sheriff's Department ball caps. And so I had one of those on. And if you don't know there isn't such a thing as Absaroka County, you might mistake it for an actual sheriff's ball cap. And so the woman behind the counter, she goes, "Where'd you get that hat?" And I was like, "Oh, she thinks I'm a real deputy. There's a problem or something." And so I looked at her and I pointed at my head and I said, "It's not a real county." And she goes, "No, it's not. It's Walt Longmire's county."
There you go.
So I looked at her and I go, "Well, I'm Craig Johnson." And she goes, "So?" I said, "Well, I'm the guy that writes the books." Again, she goes, "What books?" I said, "The books that the TV show is based off of." And she goes, "There are books?" And all I could think of at that point in time was, man, this is the way my life is going to be from here on out. I'm going to be the man behind the man, is who I'm going to be. But we're actually up to the ninth in the Walt Longmire series, and this is it, The Serpent's Tooth. It's a little bit different from any of the others, and I always enjoy that, simply because whenever I get an email from somebody that says, "I didn't like your last book," I always tell them, "Don't worry, next one's completely different. Don't worry about it." But this one's a little bit different in the sense that it kind of takes on, most of my books, are social books. Generally, they're books that. Am I killing it? Maybe I should stand up and go over to the podium. Maybe that'll help. My hand off of it or something. Hold on. How's that? Still working? Okay. This one's a little bit different, but most of my books, generally, they come from newspaper articles is what they come from. Somewhere in Wyoming and Montana, I'm driving around, I pick up a little newspaper, and it has some story in it that I'll think, okay, I think I'll use that as one of the stories. And this one wasn't all that different. There was actually one of these Warren Jeffs, little compounds that was over in Custer County over in South Dakota. And there was one of these splinter group, fundamentalist polygamy groups like that. And what I discovered was that they were having problems because the younger boys, the ones that were in their the early teens, were being kicked out of these compounds basically to make room for the older men to have more access to younger women as wives. It's really kind of a hideous situation like that. But these young men are booted out into the modern world, and they really don't have any resources. They don't have any experience. They don't have anything to try and survive on. And I just started thinking about it, and I thought, what if this happened to Walt? What if one of these young men was to show up on Walt's doorstep, in Absaroka County? What would happen then? And so anyway, that's what led to A Serpent's Tooth. And anyway, what I'd like to do at this point in time is give you guys a little reading from the beginning. I'm not going to read the whole book because I think that you can do that at home. But anyway, this is the first chapter actually of A Serpent's Tooth. Oh, wait a minute, I almost forgot something. This is only the second time I've done this, so everybody get ready to laugh, okay? Are you ready? I am to this is where I am. It's playing hurt, just so you guys know. I have to use my cheaters, and my 9-year-old colt about tore my arm out of socket here about a couple weeks ago. So if it seems like I'm turning the pages slow, that's probably why it is too. So this is chapter 1. I stared at the black and orange corsage on Barbara Thomas's lapel so that I wouldn't have to look at anything else. I don't like funerals, and a while ago I just stopped going to them. I think the ceremony is a form of denial, and when my wife died and my daughter Katie informed me that she was unaware of any instance where going to somebody's funeral ever brought them back, I just about gave it up. Mrs. Thomas had been the homecoming queen when Truman made sure that the buck stopped with him, which explained the somewhat garish ornamentation pinned on her prim and proper beige suit. Next week was the big game between the Durant Dogies and their arch rival, the Warland Warriors, and the whole town was black and orange crazy. And I have to tell you the story. It took me 9 years to find a mascot that started with a D. It took me forever. I wanted to litter it, for Durant. Like it took forever to try and find one. I was over in Newcastle, Wyoming, and this kid walks by and he had a Newcastle Dogies T-shirt on. And I was like, "That's it," which makes for good humor all the way through because Dick keeps referring to them as the doggies all the way through, and all of us keep reminding her it's Dogies. The only thing worse than going to the funeral of someone you know is going to the funeral of someone you didn't. You get to stand there and be told about somebody you'd never met, and all I ever feel is that I might have missed my chance. I had missed my chance with Dulcie Merriweather, who had been one of Durant's fine and upstanding women. After all, I am the sheriff of Absaroka County, so the fine and upstanding often live and pass beyond my notice. On a fine October afternoon, I leaned against the railing leading to the First Methodist Church, not so much to praise Dulcie Merriweather or to bury her, but rather to talk about angels. I reached out and straightened Barbara Thomas's corsage. One of the jobs of an elected official in Wyoming is to understand one's constituency, listen to people, help them with their problems, even if they're batshit crazy. I was listening to Barbara tell me about the angels who were currently assisting her with home repair, which I took as proof that she had passed the entrance exam to that particular belfry. I glanced at Mike Thomas, who'd asked me to bushwhack his aunt on this early High Plains afternoon. He wanted me to talk to her and figured the only way that he could arrange running into me was by having me stand outside the church and wait for the two of them as they departed for a late lunch after the service. I was trying not to look at the other person leaning on the railing with me, my undersheriff, Victoria Moretti, who, although she was trying to work off a hangover from too much revelry at the Basque Festival Bacchanal the night before, had decided to take advantage of my being in town on Sunday. The only person left to look at was Barbara, 82 years old, platinum hair coiffed to perfection, and evidently mad as a hatter. "So, when did the angels pitch in and start working around your place, Mrs. Thomas?" "Call me Barbara, Walter." She nodded her head earnestly, as if she didn't want me to think that she was crazy. As Vic would say, good luck with that. About 2 weeks ago, I made a little list, and suddenly the railing on the front porch was fixed. She leveled a malevolent gaze at the well-dressed cowboy in the navy blazer and tie to my left, her youngest nephew. It's difficult to get things done around home since Michael lives so far away. As near as I could remember, Mike's sculpture studio was right at the edge of town, and I knew he lived only 2 miles east, but that was between the two of them. I adjusted the collar of my flannel shirt, enjoying the fact that I wasn't in uniform today, figuring it was going to be the extent of my daily pleasures. "So the angels came and fixed the railing?" "Yes." "Anything else?" She nodded again, enthusiastically. "Lots of things. They unclogged my gutters, they rehung the screen door on the back porch, and fixed the roof of the pump house." Vic sighed. "Jesus, you want to send them over to my place?" I ignored my undersheriff, which was a difficult thing to do. She was wearing a summer dress in an attempt to forestall the season, and a marvelous portion of her tanned legs was revealed above the boots and below the hem. "Have you ever actually seen the angels, Mrs. Thomas?" "Barbara, please." She shook her head, indulging my lack of knowledge of all things celestial. "They don't work that way." "So how do they work?" She placed the palms of her hands together and leaned forward. "I make my little list, and then the things just get done. It's a sign of divine providence." Vic mumbled under her breath. "It's a sign of divine senility is what it is." Barbara Thomas continued without breaking stride. "I have a notebook where I have a number of things that have to be done in order of importance, which I leave on the room divider, and then presto." She leaned back and beamed at me. "He works in mysterious ways." She paused for a moment and glanced at the church looming over my shoulder, and then at the altar, and then altered the subject. "You used to go to services here, didn't you, Walter?" "Yes, ma'am. I used to accompany my late wife." "But you haven't been since she passed away." I took a deep breath to relieve the tightness in my chest, the way I always did when anybody brought up the subject of Martha. "No, ma'am. We had an agreement that she'd take care of the next world if I took care of this one." I glanced at Mike as he smoothed his mustache and tried not to smile, and there seems to be enough to hold my attention around here as of late. I turned my eyes back to her. "So you haven't actually seen them?" "Seen who?" "The holy handyman, for Christ's sake." Barbara looked annoyed. "Young lady, you need to watch your language." I drew Barbara's attention away from a sure-shot, head-on verbal train wreck. "But you haven't seen the angels, then?" "No." She thought about it and stared at the cracks in the sidewalk, the strands of struggling buffalo grass having abandoned all hopes of pushing through. "They do take some food out of the icebox every now and then." I kept my eyes on her. "Food?" "Yes." She thought some more. "And they sometimes take a shower." A shower. She was nodding again, but they always clean up after themselves. I just noticed because the towels are damp or there are a few pieces of fried chicken missing. I shot Mike a look, but he was studying the banks of Clear Creek on the other side of the gravel walk a little ways away, probably checking on trout and wishing that he were somewhere else. My eyes tracked back to the elderly woman. Fried chicken. Yes, it would appear that the angels really like Chester's fried chicken. I leaned back on the railing and watched the dancing pattern of the light in the water for a while myself, the scattered gold leaves of the aspen spinning like a lost flotilla. I see. And Oreos. The angels like double-stuffed Oreos, too. Anything else? Verner's Diet Ginger Ale. You must be working up quite a grocery bill feeding the legions. I smiled and chose my next words very carefully. Barbara, when these things happen, I mean, do you make your list and then go to bed and then get up in the morning and everything is repaired? Oh no, I do my agenda in the morning. Then I go out to run my errands or go to my bridge club, and then when I get back, everything is done. In the morning. No, by the middle of the afternoon. I pulled out my pocket watch and looked at it, noticing it was 10 after 1. So if I were to head over to your place right now, it's likely that I might catch the angels at their labors? She looked a little worried. I suppose. What is it you've got them doing today? She thought. There's a leak in the trap under the kitchen sink. Vic could not hold her peace. What, you mean angels are working on Sundays? I looked at the nice but crazy old lady. Where do they get the parts on a Sunday? Buell Hardware is closed. Her eyes narrowed. I get the supplies, Walter. The Lord provides, but I don't think that extends to plumbing. I stood up and she looked concerned. Where are you going? Well, I think I'll drive over to your place while you and Mike have lunch. I shrugged. Maybe I'll see if I can get Vic here a little divine guidance. Barbara Thomas folded her hands like broken winged birds and spoke in a quiet voice. I'd rather you didn't, Walter. I waited a moment and then asked, and why is that? She paused, a little petulant, and then looked up at me with damp eyes. They do good works. And you shouldn't interrupt good works.
Yeah.
Well, as you might well imagine, it is not angels that are doing the work over